Have you ever been in a conversation with a person and they're just really disagreeable? Sometimes we converse with people who are really agreeable. People who, doesn't matter what we say, doesn't matter what we do, they're just going to agree with us. You get some very agreeable people in the world, and then likewise you get some very disagreeable people in the world. So what I'm going to urge you or encourage you to do is when I present, and I'm saying when here, using the operative word, when I present ideas to you that you don't necessarily understand or like or agree with, all right, rather than disagreeing and instantly rejecting or dismissing, all right, step out of the agreement and disagreement frame, all right? Now, this is a huge principle. This is a principle that we can build into our lives, so it allows us to be so much more valuable and relevant in the context of all of our relationships. Think about it. When we're agreeing or disagreeing with people, essentially what we're saying is that, yes, I can relate to your perspective, or no, I cannot relate to your perspective. But here's this fascinating idea that in life, we're all in this ongoing process of learning, which means that we don't yet know it all. And if we don't yet know it all, what that means is that we do not understand every single perspective that's ever been communicated that every single person has on a worldwide scale. The only perspective that we actually understand all of the time is our own. And sometimes we don't even fully understand that, all right? So, when it's time for you to agree or disagree, or when you think it's time for you to agree or disagree, don't. Instead, put down your prejudices, put down your biases, and see if you can take a little bit of time and work really hard to listen and understand a different perspective, one that might be quite contrastive to your own instead. Because this is essentially how we grow as human beings. Right, we're brought into this world as little babies, and over time, we learn from our parents or from our significant others. And over a process of however many years, we develop beliefs. Now, it's interesting to note here that beliefs are not facts. Beliefs are not universal truths. Beliefs are not the law. Beliefs are just ideas that we buy into, that we accept as being true. Whether they are true or not is a completely different story. There are some people in the world today who genuinely believe that the world is flat. All right. I thought as a human race we'd kind of moved beyond that around about 1500 years ago, but how wrong I am. All right, so what I'm saying is that sometimes people can believe inaccurately, all right? So how we grow as human beings is when we are presented with new perspectives or new worldviews. We then, rather than agree or disagree with them, we take time to see if we can understand this perspective from the other person's point of view. And then we compare our perspective up against this new perspective and just make a well-informed decision as to which one might be more useful for us to embody. So it's time to agree or disagree or discover. You get to choose. You can discover and learn, or you can just agree and disagree. Cognitive behavioral therapy is an expression of helping people, if you like, right? I'm teaching you for the purpose of helping you better understand yourself. Cognitive behavioral therapists who go on to become practitioners commit to the process of helping other people because they've already built many of these ideas into their own lives and are getting the results that they want. All right, so we all need a starting point somewhere in life. A cognitive foundation is a great place. And this is essentially when we understand that cognition is made up of a number of different components. Cognition is just everything that happens inside of our mind. We want to separate the mind from the brain. We're not here talking about a hard empirical science. We're not talking about biology. The human brain falls into the field of study that associates with biology, right? Part of the human anatomy. And that's totally different. The mind here, all right, it can be very, very valuable for us to begin to consider that the mind is something else. It's kind of like the brain is the vehicle for the mind. Well, what's the mind? The mind's where all the thoughts come in. The mind is what triggers emotions. The mind, on some level, is where our beliefs get developed. It's what gives birth to our attitudes, sometimes our reactions, our responses, all these sorts of things. Also, inside of our mind, memories are stored. Now, the interesting thing about memories is sometimes we have memories that we think are constant. Sometimes we have memories that we think are universal truths, right? Sometimes we can put 2 and 2 together and come up with 374, all right? Sometimes we arrive at the wrong end of the stick. Sometimes we jump to incorrect conclusions. We make inaccurate assumptions. Sometimes our memories are actually based upon inaccurate assumptions, right? Give you an example. I was having a conversation a few weeks ago with a young man who had really struggled with his own sense of kind of confidence and self-worth for many years. Now, this guy was working in the corporate world. He was in his mid-40s. He was like I think a CEO of some, I think it was some sort of social enterprise organisation. So on a professional level, doing very, very well in life. And he said to me, he says, yeah, Kane, I feel like I'm out of my depth. I thought, my goodness, you strike me as quite a competent and highly skilled man. What else, whatever are you talking about? And he says, I've always felt like I'm out of my depth. Kind of like at some point I'm going to get caught out. I thought, oh, caught out for what? Are you misbehaving? And he said, no, I just don't feel like I'm ready for this position. And I said, so you feel like you're not good enough. Perhaps you're not smart enough, not clever enough. Yeah, that's kind of it. And I said, when did you make up your mind about this? And he said, I've always felt insufficient as far back as I can remember. As far back as I can remember takes us back to the day that this kind of decision was made and this memory was born. We make decisions about who we are today and about what we're capable of, what we're not capable of, how good we are, how not good we are, how skilled and talented we either are or aren't, based upon our interactions in the past, which is all memories. All right, so if you ask a person whether they are going to be more than capable of partaking in an activity or accomplishing a task or passing an exam at some point in the future, well, what they're going to do is, on an unconscious cognitive level, they're going to dip into their pasts, recall times from yesteryear where they've had the same or similar experiences, and if they've got a history of failing in the past, they're going to most likely say something along the lines of, no, I'm going to fail at this, I'm not going to be able to do this, I feel really anxious, I'm getting stressed out, because people don't essentially want to believe that they're failures or not clever enough or not good enough. But our memories can sometimes act as like a 10-ton weight on our shoulders that weigh us down and hold us back in life. So it's when we begin to understand how it is that our memories are structured that we can actually become a little bit more liberated in our day-to-day endeavours by realising that we are not our pasts. We could have a series of failures going back, but we could either define ourselves by failure, or we can look back to learn the lessons that we've learned along the way, which actually sets us up to become significantly more effective moving forward. All I'm really doing my best to show you here is that there's always 2 ways or more of looking at things, all right? And this is kind of like the power of our mind. Our mind is unlimited in its flexibility, all right? Unless we decide that we've made up our mind and that we are not willing to change it. So the mind can be as flexible or as rigid as we are willing to have it. All right, our perception. Our perception is another part of our cognition in life. Our perception is just simply how we see things. All right, the way I like to sometimes communicate this is, have you ever met a really focused person? Right, okay, so what do focused people do? Focused people focus on things, don't they? Perhaps work or projects or achieving or creating things or something like that. Focus is all about what we're looking at, what we're giving our attention. Our perspective is where we're looking from, all right? Where we're looking from is always going to be based upon our memories, okay? The assumptions that we've made of ourselves, what's possible, things like that. Our perception then is just our interpretation of what's going on, all right? It's kind of like you and I could be standing in the same room. I could be standing in one corner, you could be standing in the other corner. And then someone brings in a big sculpture, all right? So I'm looking at the sculpture from one angle, you're looking at the sculpture from the other angle. From the angle that you're looking at the sculpture from, you see an eagle. The angle that I'm looking at the sculpture from, I just see a big lump of concrete. I can't see any eagle because I can't see that from the angle that I'm standing from, right? So we then have a conversation And you say, well, I see an eagle. And I say, no, there's no eagle there. It's just a big lump of concrete. And what do you say? I disagree. There's an eagle there. I say, well, I can't see it. There's no eagle there. And what I'm saying here, right, is that our perception is always based upon A, what we're focused on, what we're looking at, and also B, then, where we're looking from, our perspective. Perception sits somewhere in between. So two people can look at exactly the same thing and take away two completely different interpretations. All right. Now, the reason why this is important for you to understand is because you will have looked at yourself and evaluated yourself in a certain way from your perspective. You will have a perception of yourself. And I guarantee you that your perception of you is going to be very, very different from someone else's perception of you, because they're looking at you from a different perspective. All right, seeing parts of you that you most likely can't see or aren't looking at. All right, so the reason why I'm saying all of this is I'm saying all of this to loosen you up in your thinking. All right, I want to get in your face just a little bit and help you to better appreciate the extent of the choices that we actually have to review ourselves and things and other people and situations and the world at large differently. Because we can. We're only ever one shift in perspective away from completely transforming the way in which we perceive anything, even ourselves. Anticipation, right? Anticipation is about the state of readiness we find ourselves in today in consideration of the future. So what I'm saying is here, what we anticipate will always determine the level of angst we experience in the moment, and also the level of disappointment or satisfaction that we find. When our expectations are met, for better or for worse, we will then feel a certain way. I'll give you an example of this. Karen and I recently went to the movies, all right, to watch the most recent Christopher Nolan movie. Now, I love Christopher Nolan, all right, he's one of my favourite directors in the whole world. And this movie was called Tenet. Now, I had been waiting for around about 12 months to watch this movie, and this was a movie that was due to be released just before the COVID-19 lockdown happened. So I was looking forward to seeing Tenet. I'd read all about it, read all the kind of critics' reviews, all that sort of thing, which were all pretty good, and I knew that this new Christopher Nolan movie was going to be fantastic. So we went to the movies. I knew it was going to be fantastic. I didn't really have any expectations as to what the storyline was exactly going to be. And what happened when I left, it met my expectations. I came out completely satisfied. Now, Karen was a little bit indifferent. She's more into chick flicks and stuff like that. But there was a couple of young guys walking alongside of us, and one of them seemed to have the same response to this movie as I. He was, oh, that was fantastic, that movie was brilliant, that was like on a par with Inception and the Dark Knight trilogy. And then the other guy says, yeah, no, it didn't meet my expectations, a little bit disappointed. Kind of as if Christopher Nolan and the directors really should have taken this young man's expectations into consideration when producing this movie. Nah, life doesn't work this way. All right, our expectations are just guesswork at best. There's a beautiful idea in life, and this can really set us free, and this is that we're not entitled to anything. We go through life with expectations. We sometimes enter into marriage, expectations as to what marriage will be like, what it's going to give us. Some people go into parenthood with expectations. You know, once I've got my 2.4 children, life will be fantastic. I'll have made it. That's the pinnacle of life. It's a pinnacle of success. And personally, going back around about 12 years ago, I was kind of building different businesses, and you know, I had this idea that, you know, my goodness, if I can publish a book, or if I could build this business, life will be better. When I had these expectations, and then the results came about, and the results were fine. But I realised that expectations don't actually serve us in any way whatsoever. We actually grow to appreciate life and our experiences significantly more when we learn and discipline ourselves to expect and anticipate less. All right, now think about how this negatively impacts some people. All right, think about students now. I really want to unpack and help you. I want to give you some real life scenarios so you can relate this to yourself and understand it. Right, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, going back a few years ago now, I'm not giving away my age, I used to dread exams. Don't know about you. Because what I'd learned from the age of kind of 12, 13, 14 onwards was that, I don't do well on exams. I do not do well when put under pressure, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There's different degrees of pressure. So you can put me in the midst of a really intense environment. My background was actually in the military, believe it or not. So I've served in Iraq in the last Gulf War and a few other pressure pot environments. So on one level, I can manage and handle stress and tension pretty well. But then on another level, I can't. All right, put a time frame on me to deliver a certain outcome or a creative project or pass an exam or complete an exam. I stress myself right out. Honestly, I do. This is teacher talking. Teacher gets stressed right out. All right, when you put a time frame or a time restriction upon teacher, my goodness, right? Listen, I'm just being honest. All right, I'm not here to be your guru. I'm here to be a real human being sharing some lessons that I've learned along the way. All right. So put me in an exam scenario, all right? And what will I anticipate? Running out of time. And what happens as I anticipate running out of time? I get stressed out. And then when I get stressed out, what do I focus on in the exam? I focus on my stress more than the questions that I'm being asked. Then what happens? That's right, I run out of time because I spent most of my exam focusing more on being stressed than on the questions that were being asked of me. Questions that I was more than capable of answering, but I didn't. Instead, I just stressed myself out instead. Right, okay. I've learned to regulate myself more effectively over the last number of years, all right? But honestly, me plus exams, we have never historically had a particularly good relationship. So just in case you are the kind of person who gets stressed out sometimes, all right? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, all right? There is an effective way of regulating ourselves to minimize the stress that we experience on a day-to-day basis. And this gives us a starting point when we learn how to manage our expectations. All right, you finding any value in this? Is this meeting your expectations or not? All right, problem solving. What I want to boldly propose here, right? We all go through life with problems and tensions. All right, two very different things. Problems always relate to a lack of process or an ineffective system that we have in place in some area of life. So it's important to understand, right, there's kind of two areas of life. We've got problems that can only be solved. We solve problems. Tensions can only be managed. Tensions generally tend to have a relational component attached to them. So we generally have tensions in our relationships. All right, think about stress. What's stress? Is stress a problem or is stress a tension? That's right, stress is a tension. What about fear? Is fear a problem? Well, it might be causing you a lot of problems, but what actually is it? Is it a problem or is it a tension? Well, of course, fear, anxiety, stress, anger is tension. All right, so the reason why I'm breaking this down and hopefully helping you to appreciate this is because we cannot manage tensions. It's not physically possible. We cannot solve tensions. It's not physically possible to solve tensions. We can only solve problems. We solve problems by building processes or systems or disciplines into our life. Tensions can only ever be managed. All right? And the thing about managing is a perpetual process. All right? So it's not like you can just get a technique, do a quick fix technique for stress and that's you stress-free for the rest of your life. All right? I still get stressed. But what I have learned is a discipline and a process that I've built into my life. So if I do find myself feeling stress, what do? Well, I've learned how to manage it. All right, through creating either more time or more space, because I identified in my life that stress was always related to a lack of time or lack of space. All right, so it's good to make these connections because when we understand different components of our humanness in this way, we become significantly more effective at problem solving or managing tensions, one of the two. But it all revolves around decision making. We talked about the kind of people that we want more of in our lives. People who are responsible, mature, decisive, consistent, strong. Because we can trust these people. We know we can rely on these people over time once we get to know them. All right? So here's the thing. Being decisive is all about making decisions. Why is it that many people end up spending their whole lives going round and round in circles in lifeless relationships that they get no fulfillment in dead-end careers that they absolutely loathe, they find no satisfaction or reward in. Why? Because some people, because they anticipate worst case scenarios, happening at some point in the future, they end up remaining where they're at and making no decision or a decision to stay as they are and change nothing. So listen, we're all making choices and decisions all of the time, whether we're aware of it or not. Some people might say, I'm a really indecisive person. I'm very good at making decisions. Well, that's not true. All right, even those people who who do nothing with their life, they're choosing to do nothing, which means that they're already expert decision makers. All right, this is all about learning to train our brains to think in more useful and productive and effective ways, because we can become extremely effective at choosing to do nothing and not take risks and not step outside of the comfort zone, or we can then structure and discipline our minds to make a bit more peace with taking risks and stepping outside of the comfort zone. Because it's only when we do take risks and step outside of the comfort zone that we can begin to experience more of what we actually want in our lives. When we're not experiencing that which we want in our lives, it tends to cause us cognitive, rational and emotional problems. So CBT is a very, very relevant field of study. Now, I do appreciate I've kind of painted quite a big picture here, and I have gone into a little bit of detail, but the alternative approach I could have taken was just giving you a statement to go away, write down and remember. But I don't think that would have served you too much. I'm hoping I've now brought cognitive behavioural therapy a little bit more alive for you. Okay, so this is you, it's me, it's every single person on the face of our planet.